Welcome viewers, this is Literary Goa, the program that looks at books and authors from Goa. Today we have someone who's a bit different because he's a publisher. But before we start that story, we'll talk about Leonard Fernandes' past, where he was an engineer who passed out from the Goa Engineering College in 1997, mechanical stream. From mechanical at GEC, Leonard, to here is a long distance. How did that journey happen?
Okay, thank you for having me here, first of all. So I graduated in 1997, and then the search for jobs
As an engineer?
as an engineer didn't get me very far in mechanical engineering, so I got into computer programming. And as part of that, I went to the US. I was there till 2005.
Ohio?
I did my MBA at Ohio State University. And during the MBA program, I realized the market for used books that existed in the US.
But actually, it's something very brave that you did, because both you and your wife, Queenie Rodriguez, moved back to Goa.
Yeah, so following that, I finished my MBA in 2004. In 2005, we decided to move back to Goa. And primarily, we decided to set up a portal for used books, where used books could be traded, because I had seen how the market works in the US. And we called it Dog Ears, etc., because it related to used books and dog-eared books. So that's how Dog Ears, etc. came into
Used
being.
books has the dog-eared kind of nature, and
Yes.
that's an innovative name.
Yeah, so that's why we called it Dog-Eared Books. And primarily the website was supposed to facilitate trade of used books, peer-to-peer. It was not. It was now what is called a marketplace, but at that point we envisaged it as a peer-to-peer book selling platform.
So Goa was a bit unprepared for that when you all were ready. Was it an idea before its time?
Yeah, it was an idea much before its time, and even now, because people are very reluctant to part with their books. So textbooks, yes, but textbooks become obsolete within a few years. So
But in the West, it works.
it works very well.
Very well.
And because books are expensive to begin with, so people trade used books a lot.
I actually quite admire your bravery and your persistence, because from a well-paying field like computer sciences, particularly then, and management in your wife's case, you all moved down to books.
Yeah.
But of course, we'll talk more about that journey as we go along, and it'll emerge. So from there, the next stop was, if I understand right, Cinnamon Teal.
Yeah. So Queenie is actually MA in economics.
Gokhale?
Gokhale Institute. So between us, we set up Dog Ears, etc., which was the bookshop, and then we realized that there are people who are asking us to publish their books. Now there were, you know the NBT statistics, right? 16,000 publishers and whatnot.
National Book Trust?
National Book Trust statistics.
Okay.
So we were wondering why another book publisher is required, and what difference will that book publisher make? So we were researching the internet, and we saw this thing about self-publishing. And
It was just starting, 2006, 2007, 2005?
B2B self-publishing was already there in India, but B2C wasn't there.
Business to consumer.
Business to consumer, where somebody like you and me could go and say, I want to publish my book. Business to business was already there. So businesses who wanted to publish books, there was a service for them. And we set up the first B2C self-publishing set up in India.
You mean you were before Poti.com and a whole lot of others?
So we set up in October 2006.
I see.
Poti set up in February 2007.
Interesting, very interesting. Of course, I know that in any interview that there is on self-publishing, on publishing, alternative modes of publishing, Cinnamon Teal is most likely to be interviewed nationwide in that sense, no?
Yeah, so and it was a lot about educating the consumer at that point, because nobody understood what self-publishing was. It's a model in which the author pays for publishing, rather than what is called as traditional publishing, in which the publisher puts their money in.
So it's easy to publish, but there is a certain amount of work the author has to commit himself or herself to distribute and to make the book noticeable.
Yeah, and going in, we were very careful to make sure that the integrity of the book is not tampered with.
So even if the author is paying, you're not going to publish rubbish?
I'm not going to publish rubbish. I'm not going to publish without editing. I'm not going to put clip art on the cover and say that's a cover.
Okay.
So all those aspects of the book, I want that the author should remain committed to.
Okay.
But the main difference is that the author is putting his money into his own books.
So, how many books so far?
So roughly around 10 to 15 books a month.
Total?
So maybe 120 books
Wow.
a year. It's
Yeah.
about 10 years now. So
That's a lot. That's a lot. But of course, the viewer needs to understand that all these books may not be large editions. They could be small editions also.
So
What's
the average print run you could say is about 100.
and the smallest print run?
The smallest is where we have directly put it online and said let the market order.
Okay.
So maybe 50 to
Okay.
60.
Okay.
But we have printed even 3,000.
I see.
4,000
Wow.
copies out sometimes.
Wow.
So, but initially when self-publishing came, it was not about books for public consumption. It
Yeah.
was books for private consumption. So, for example, family histories, family genealogy.
Or if your mother is celebrating her 90th birthday and you want to put together all her recipes
Yeah.
and gift it
Those were the books that initially used to come.
I see.
Now with this whole people have started earning money, and a book is a way of showing that you have arrived. So not necessarily the best books, but people come and say, I want this book to be published.
What are the pros and cons of print on demand versus commercial publishing? Of course, both have their pluses and minuses, no
print on
doubt.
demand is yet another model
Okay.
where you say that I won't print books in advance. I will print books only when they are demanded. So
yeah.
when there's a sale. It is what Dell's negative inventory. Dell computers had come with this negative inventory that I will put together the computer after the order comes.
Yeah, okay, but without
So
getting too technical.
So the book is printed after the order is placed.
Yeah.
So what that means is that it cannot go onto a shelf,
Yeah.
or it can, because it can only go onto an online store.
Self-publishing versus traditional publishing, pros and cons?
Main con is that it does not have the marketing backup of a good publisher.
But the entry barriers are very low.
Entry barriers are very low. So you can, so if you get a book edited by a good editor,
Yeah.
and if you can get your friend to design a good cover, then basically what you're paying for is only the print run. And if you put it on print on demand, you're not even paying for the print run, because the consumer is paying for the.
And you don't have to think in terms of 1,000 or 500 copies. You can.
You don't have to think in terms of maybe 10 copies of it.
That's because of the change in technology.
Yeah. So that technology is still evolving.
Okay.
So now the minimum print run is 2.
I see.
So,
I see. Two books, two copies of a book.
of a book.
Of course, the per copy cost will come
Per
high.
copy cost is high,
But it's not like you have the stock.
but the total cost of ownership is low.
Correct.
Because you don't have to pay for 1,000 copies.
Correct.
So yeah.
So in that sense, tell us something about the Goa books that you brought out through this model. I know that you all have brought out some very interesting and prestigious books, including Art the Lingua Canary.
Yeah. So Art the Lingua Canary is actually where we put our own money. It was not a self-published book.
Yeah.
We realized that prior to the Krista Puran being published in 1619, Father Thomas Stevens had published a book of Konkani grammar
I see.
for the Roman script reading peoples,
Okay.
where the missionaries would then acquaint themselves with the local language through a medium. So it is Konkani grammar explained in Portuguese,
I see.
and this was in that type, so it's not.
Yeah.
And we realized that a copy existed in SOAS, School of Oriental and African Studies
UK.
in UK, and we approached them and asked them, can we do a facsimile copy?
You mean to say that between then and your time, it was not reprinted at all?
It was not reprinted and it was not in Goa.
Not available.
It was not available in Goa, although it's such a. So when Dr. Madhavi Sardesai, who passed away recently, she saw it, she realized that it's a document of the linguistic evolution of the Konkani language, because how it was studied then and how it is studied now.
Frozen in time, kind of.
Frozen
no?
in time, kind of. So it was a very important document to have.
Okay.
And we are glad we brought out that book.
Very interesting. Apart from that, I also remember coming for the launch of the book of the firing in Margao.
Yeah, that is again a book we brought ourselves.
Which was this, just for some way of background, there was this dispute between two sections of Goans who were fighting over party politics.
So it depends on whom you listen to.
Okay, okay. There are many versions of this story.
There are many versions of the story, and
there was a Portuguese firing and 21 guys were killed.
21 guys were killed. So to put it into context, this is before Jallianwala Bagh. And
yeah.
So
1891?
1890, 21st September. 1890.
Okay. Okay. So and the bullet holes are still there in the house in Margao, no? Yeah. If you're going via the church square.
Opposite is, it's adjacent to the Holy Spirit Church.
Yeah.
And we realized that it's not that it was not documented.
Yeah.
For example, Maria Aurora Couto's book, Goa Daughter Story, has it.
Yeah.
And there are many...
talking about it.
Yeah. But there was never a book dedicated to it.
So and this was in graphic novel form, in comic form, what we would call.
Yeah. So that's again something that we brought in-house. We brought it out in-house.
Some other Goa books, can you tell us about?
We also published Father Vellinkar's 2 books.
On history of Goa. Father Vellinkar is this Jesuit scholar based in St. Xavier's, Bombay.
Yeah.
Bombay.
And then we brought Teresa Albuquerque's collection of articles on the Portuguese influence in Bassin,
right.
Goa.
Right.
And
Father Nascimento J. Mendonça's.
His dictionary.
Yeah, his listing of priest, very encyclopedic, very fat, thick volume.
The Tiswari Taluka.
2 volumes or one was it?
1 volume.
1 volume.
One volume. And then Tenzing Rodriguez. He brought out his a compilation of his father's writings.
Tenzing Rodriguez's father is Professor L.A. Rodriguez. Yeah, Ludin Rodriguez, who was very prominent as a professor of Dempe College and also a great scholar of Konkani language. Many of these unsung people who otherwise would not get a chance to be published or for their works to be known. I remember that's a very nice volume costing just 200 rupees each.
That was, I think,
2 volumes.
Supported by the director of...
Arts and Culture? No, official language.
Official languages.
Whatever.
So, yeah, so bringing together different resources and putting together a good book.
Since we are talking economics at this point, would it be right to say that there is pressure on bringing out a book in Goa at this point? If so, why? Is it because of the small market? Some people disagree with me on my pet theory.
What's your pet theory?
That the market is small, so books, traditional publishing needs 500-1,000 copies.
Yeah, so that is one way of looking at it, and I think so. Pod helps that.
Print on demand.
Print on demand helps that. You put out 50 copies, you say, okay, that has sold out. Let me bring out another 50 copies. Another way of looking at it is looking at the diaspora and saying, okay, if this book really wants to resonate with Goa, it might resonate with the diaspora also, and bringing out a larger print run.
A third way could be to build a market locally in that sense, no, with time.
Yeah, but
it
depends on the book that you're bringing. So if it's a fiction based in Goa, maybe you'll get a bigger market for it rather than a niche history book, which anyway social sciences have a small audience.
Yeah. So while we are on that point, what are the kinds of books you prefer to publish? Which are the books that sell? I know you and me have the shared bias that poetry doesn't sell, and poets are going to get angry with us for saying it, but that's how we look at it.
Yeah. Poetry doesn't sell, but even if you look at the bigger publishers, they don't print more than 750,000 copies of poetry. So maybe an Asif Karimboy or a Ranjit Hoskote will sell more than that.
Yeah.
But even the others, very few copies. There are no favorite books, but if I were putting my money on a book, it would be mostly history of some historical aspect of Goa. What is missing, and this is something you might agree with, is people coming to Goa and saying, can I have a history of Goa, and there's no book.
Everyone is asking for that. Students asking for it.
There is one book that Director of Official Languages published by Olivinio Gomes called Concise History of Goa, which is out of print again. So there's no way of bringing it back unless I don't know whom the rights lie with. But we need a history of Goa.
That's true.
We need something
at a glance
to put it.
You're right, I absolutely agree with you. And if you just joined us, viewers, we are talking to Leonard Fernandes, who is involved, who is the founder, co-founder of Dog Ears ETC, Cinnamon Teal, and Publishing Next, which we are going to talk about next. But yeah, this is all about books, and we have a lot to learn, and I am sure that people would be surprised at the large number of even Goa related books which are there, which you brought out, which they are not aware of in that sense.
Yeah.
But having said that, tell us about Publishing Next, which is your third baby.
So publishing next was so in 2010, Cinnamon Teal won the Young Creative Entrepreneur Award.
You won it. Okay.
We won it, but yeah, basically we put Cinnamon Teal as a
Okay,
business.
okay.
So it's given to a business.
And Cinnamon Teal is jointly run by you and your wife Queenie,
Queenie.
apart from the staff, but you all
Yeah.
are the founders.
So yeah, we're the founders.
Co-founders?
Co-founders,
Co-founders.
and basically the only constants in that. But anyway, so in 2010 we got that award, which was a British Council award for creative businesses.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, young creative.
Young creative businesses. And as part of that award, they allowed us, they gave us pass to the London Book Fair.
Okay.
And we realized how little is known, how little information about the publishing industry is created in India. So if you want to learn about publishing, there's really no place to
Okay.
go. There's no books, there is no documentation of any kind. And in those days, there used to be one seminar, one conference called Tools of Change,
I see.
which was held by the O'Reilly Books
In Britain,
New York,
US.
in New York. They have folded up since then, but basically it was to prepare publishers for what the future lies for
I
them.
see.
So that's why when we realized, when we said, okay, let's have a Tools of Change here in India, and we called it Publishing Next, because what is the next about
Okay.
publishing? And we had our first edition in 2011
At International Center
at
Goa.
International Center Goa. We had about 30 speakers, we had about 50 others, so we had a crowd of about 80 people. And we realized soon then that, you know, there are many publishers who are not even in the present, forget about the future. So we had to kind of reconfigure Publishing
Okay.
Next to be about explaining what the future is and what the present is also, how things are done, what are the best practices, things like that.
So to put it briefly, it has been this conference which is held for the last 8 years, mostly in Goa, except once or twice maybe outside.
Once in Kochi,
Once in Kochi, once
once in Delhi.
Delhi.
Mm.
And it attracts publishers from across the country, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm quite gung-ho about it, and those who have read my pieces would know that I'm very upbeat, although in a way we are business rivals in that
Yeah.
sense. But I think it's a very innovative experiment, and really great that you managed to keep it going all these years. What's the response like to it?
The response is good, meaning there are people who come and say, okay, this has taught me about publishing.
You get big names coming in.
I get big names coming in as speakers. So
It's surprising, no, for them to come to a small place like Goa and spend 3 days here, three if not
yeah,
more.
but I think now, so when we started, there was one more, there was Global Local, which
I
was a
see.
German book office thing. We have kind of moved into another space, which is children's publishing.
Okay.
So for a long time, we were the only one. Then Jaipur Bookmark has its, Jaipur Literature Festival has a similar thing called
Okay.
Jaipur Bookmark.
Okay.
But to get publishers to come only for a conference
Yeah.
on publishing
It's not easy.
is not easy. So in that sense, we have managed to do that. And it's very intense. You've been there.
Yeah.
It's only, we discuss all aspects of publishing.
And it's very serious. No, people don't come here for a picnic like the other conferences tend to end up.
I don't think they even get time for a picnic. Like, you know.
So they pay their gate money, they come in.
They come in.
Of course, the biggest struggle to keep it going has been to get support and sponsors, and you know, because it's a costly affair. No, you have to pay for the plane
So
fares of
for
speakers.
the speakers, we pay their travel and
Yeah.
stay.
Yeah.
So that costs. And then the. So this year we had it for 4 days.
Yeah.
So those costs of land.
And this year there were sessions dealing with what?
There were sessions. So we have 3 parts. We have master classes where we teach them basics. So we taught them basics about editing, production, and marketing.
Yeah.
Then we have workshops. So we had the author contract explained, and we had book reviewing explained, and things like that. And then we have panel discussions. So we had book retail and self-publishing and translations and those aspects explained.
It's pretty amazing, no? In spite of there being so much publishing happening in India, there is still need to learn at places
Yeah,
like this.
because many publishers learn on the job, as it were, you know. So they might not be aware that, for example, there need to be contracts between authors and publishers, or that there need to be contracts between, or the whole copyright, that you
Yeah.
just cannot take something from Google and put it on your
Yeah.
cover, things like that. They are not things that they purposefully
Ignore.
ignore, These are things they are just not aware
They are
of.
not aware of.
And they might get into legal issues and things like that. It's better that they understand those points.
You know, Leonard, you know my perspective on this. I am also gung-ho about Goa being the starting point of printing in Asia, in the Gutenberg press sense,
Yeah.
in 1556. Then we went through many phases and we, went down and became almost next to nothing. Now we seem to be picking up. Having said all that, what do you see as the role for Goa in the world of printing publishing? It's a tiny part of India. It's a tiny, almost 1,000th part of India. What role do you see playing? Of course, you have already started this national level conference.
No, but I think because of our small market, there are things we can try. you
Like?
know, like translations. I think Konkani is the most under-translated language.
Yeah.
Sure. Meaning I don't know about
Okay.
all the languages, but I think there's a lot of material in Konkani that can be brought into
I see.
English. And because of our small market, what you see
I
as
see.
a negative, I think that it's easy to experiment with.
Fewer numbers of
Fewer
copies, so
numbers
yeah,
of
it's not
copies
won't be a
and
big
things
mistake,
like
even
that.
if it's a mistake. Yeah.
I think what you're doing with the Wikipedia is also is a wonderful initiative. But I don't necessarily see the small size as a negative. The Goa Art and Literature Festival, we had publishing sessions there last year. We're trying to have more
I
this
see.
year. I think all these initiatives need to come together and
There is
some sort
something
of
happening,
synergy.
but just getting it together is a
getting
challenge.
it together is a challenge. Also, I think the Goa book market is underserved. You and I can count how many bookstores are there in Goa, and they're all on the coastal belt. I think
How many libraries also are there?
how many libraries are there?
We
Of
need
course,
more. We need more. We need
on
much
paper,
more.
there are 12 libraries.
It's 136 if you count the small ones
No,
also.
I'm talking about the
Okay.
Goa libraries. The state central
state-
libraries are managed. 12 are there.
At the
12
district
being-
level, talukas,
at the district
talukas.
level. But still, Mapsa doesn't have one, and they are going to have one, and Vasco doesn't have one. So, libraries are not. And how many of these libraries actually see footfalls as
Yeah.
libraries? Or they're just, there because.
We have a
We
good
have the
central
money.
library and a good one in Navili, but apart from
Yeah.
that, it's like a desert, no, in that
Yeah.
sense.
So I think books selling. So that's what when we say it's a small market. See, for example, I was just talking to someone the other day who said, "Let me have a music program in your bookshop," and I said, "Why not?" And she said, "Will you have it ticketed?" And I said, "Why not?" And will they come? We don't know whether they'll come because they never had one before. So we don't know whether people will actually buy books if they get access to books.
What